Hey, today I want to talk a little bit about metabolic disorders and a couple of studies that have shown what really matters when it comes to these disorders. So this study took 3 different groups of people, one normal weight group of people, one obese, but they had normal blood sugar levels, and one group was obese with full type 2 diabetes diagnoses. They tested all 3 groups for glucose, insulin, and free fatty acids in their blood to determine kind of where their baselines were. They found that in the obese groups, both with and without type 2 diabetes, they had higher free fatty acids in their blood and higher insulin levels, even though they had the same relative glucose levels. So they had high insulin, even though they didn't have high blood sugars. So that alone is indicative. And this really tells you that glucose alone, whether it's fasting or postprandial after a meal, glucose alone is actually a lagging indicator. So you won't see elevated glucose levels that would typically be used to diagnose these metabolic disorders. You won't see elevated glucose levels early on, but you will see elevated insulin levels early on. That's what leads to insulin resistance, is the chronically high insulin level. Now, that's not to say that glucose has no value. There was another study done where they looked at continuous glucose monitors, and this is a device that a lot of type 1 diabetics wear, but is becoming more common in type 2 diabetes or even in athletes, anybody that really wants to know where their metabolic health is. A lot of people are now wearing continuous glucose monitors. Well, they did a study using these devices and found that when people understood the effect of what different foods were causing on their blood sugar levels, they naturally ended up lowering their carbohydrate intake and increasing their physical activity because they could see what that was doing to their glucose levels. Ultimately, this was leading to regulated blood sugar levels. The peaks of their blood sugar after their meals were not as high. The troughs of their crashes were not as low. So the overall regulation was much tighter instead of these huge swings. And this led to lasting reversal of any of their glucose dysregulation, any of their insulin dysregulation. They were much more able to lose the weight and keep it off. So what does this mean for you? Glucose matters. Your blood sugars really do have a tremendous impact on your metabolic health, and metabolic health is related to every chronic disease there is. Insulin resistance is not just about diabetes. So glucose matters, and it's the easiest thing to control. And when you control your glucose, you end up controlling your insulin. Having extra weight can mean that you have extra free fatty acids floating in your blood, and that can lead to insulin resistance. So losing the weight is tremendous. But sometimes that's really difficult to do if you're already in an insulin resistant state. So what you have to do is get control over the blood sugars, and then once you have control over the blood sugars, you have better control over the insulin, and the weight loss will be easier.